Hello and welcome to a new Geektown Behind the Scenes podcast. I'm your host Dave Elliott, and this week I'm chatting with Anna Fishko, creator and showrunner of Orphan Black Echoes, the highly anticipated follow-up to the brilliant sci-fi Orphan Black, which has just landed in the UK on ITVX. Orphan Black Echoes stars Krysten Ritter from Jessica Jones and Breaking Bad as Lucy, who woke up 2 years ago in a strange room with no memory of who she was or where she came from, and she's been running ever since. That is until her past finally catches up with her and she's faced with the reality that she was created in a lab, and those who had a hand in her making want her dead. Alongside Krysten, there is an absolutely stellar cast as well. Keeley Hawes is in there, which you'll know from The Bodyguard, The Durrells, Line of Duty, and a million other things. Avan Jogia from Zombieland, James Hiroyuki Liao from Barry, Kihlstedt from Superman and Lois, and Amanda Fix from High School. Prior to developing Orphan Black Echoes, Anna worked as a writer and producer on Netflix's brilliant drama Pieces of Her, along with their YA drama The Society, AMC's Fear the Walking Dead, and many other series. However, this was the first time she'd actually stepped into the role of creator and showrunner and was responsible for the entire series. All 5 seasons of the original Orphan Black and the 10-episode first season of Orphan Black Echoes are both available right now on ITVX in the UK, and Orphan Black Echoes comes to AMC Plus in the USA on June 23rd. You don't need to have seen the original Orphan Black to be able to jump into Orphan Black Echoes if you don't have the time to go through all 5 seasons of the original show, although I would say it is well worth a watch, and Tatiana Maslany's performance is outstanding in that show, so if you have got the time, do go watch the original. But Orphan Black Echoes is now up on ITVX in the UK. You can go and stream it right now. If you'd like to hear more behind-the-scenes interviews, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts by searching for Geektown Radio. This will also give you our weekly Geektown Radio podcast, which brings you all the latest TV, film, and gaming news. You can also go to the website at geektown.co.uk for daily news stories and all the latest UK and US TV premiere dates. Now, here is the interview with Anna Fishko, creator and showrunner of Orphan Black Echoes. Hi Anna, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for taking the time to talk about the show.
No, it's my pleasure.
I've seen the first couple of episodes of it. They only sent me 2 episodes and I want to see more.
Oh, good. Well, I think you will get to soon, hopefully.
Yes, it's coming up fairly soon. So I really, really loved the original show. So I was very interested when you announced this. I was a huge fan of the original series. How did you get involved in Orphan Black Echoes?
The original Canadian studio Boat Rocker came to me and asked whether or not I could kind of develop a fresh take for them. Obviously the success of the original show was very important for them, and so it was this very prized piece of intellectual property, and so I think they spent a long time trying to find the right way to give it a new life. And so we talked about a little bit what they did want in terms of pulling themes from the original show and sort of the space wanted it to occupy in terms of science and identity and this idea of kind of found family, and then also what they didn't want, which was, at the time they felt like because the original show and Tatiana Maslany had really done this amazing job pulling this whole feat off of playing many versions of herself, I think they smartly thought it would be very difficult to replicate that. So they didn't just want to do that over again. So they were looking for something that would give you a lot of similar opportunities, but not kind of just be a copy of the original.
Yes, I get that. I did wonder whether there was some discussion about sort of clones or not, because I adore Tatiana's performance. It's an incredible performance in that original. Yes, but I can imagine from a production point of view, that must have been an absolute nightmare for them to do.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there, but I heard it was very time consuming and complicated to do. And they developed a way to do it and they pulled it off. But I think it certainly was was challenging too from a production standpoint.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. You got Krysten Ritter as the lead in this, playing a character called Lucy. Maybe smile slightly because you're in this weird position where Krysten Ritter's gone from sort of Marvel to Orphan Black, and then Tatiana Maslany's gone from Orphan Black to Marvel. So how did she become involved? Because I know she's an exec producer as well. Were you involved in the process of her being coming on board?
Yeah. We started looking at actresses probably it was also long ago, but a few months into the writer's room, and she was at the top of our list just in terms of what an amazing actress she is, and the way she sort of fits in the genre, and obviously she's got such a big following, and she felt like Lucy in a lot of ways because she has this kind of toughness and then a vulnerability about her that worked really well for the character.
Yeah, I mean, she's phenomenal, both Breaking Bad and Jessica Jones, and the other stuff she's done. She's been brilliant. In terms of the story that you come up with, like you say, you're not dealing with clones. I think what you've come up with is really quite clever, as sort of being adjacent to it without being the same thing, which I think is a wonderful piece of writing. So do you want to just explain a little bit about how you got into coming up with the story for this?
It was interesting. In part, my husband was a philosophy professor for many years, and he has done a lot of work on personal identity issues. He taught a lot of classes, and he was a huge fan of the original show, and sometimes would talk about it and teach it in his classes. And so when they first approached me about the idea, I was talking with him about it, and it was really interesting and just helped me to sort of shape the approach, because in philosophy, they often use these kind of thought experiments, stories basically that specifically underline and help people think about these more complicated issues. So the thought experiment of the original show is if you had identical copies of the same person, but they all had different upbringings, does that mean they're the same person really, literally, or are they different people? And what makes you, essentially? What shapes your identity? And so this idea kind of came out of those conversations with him, that if you had a scan of a certain person, and then, would it be interesting to have these kind of time slices of that person that you could interact with each other in the same space and the same time, and how would you interact with this past version of yourself, and what would change you if you could know yourself and this future version of yourself? How would that inform your choices and your decisions and who you were? So that was kind of where the idea originated from, were these kind of really interesting philosophical conversations that I had with him.
Yes. I hope he's getting a credit on this as well.
He is. He gets a big credit. Yeah. I give him a lot of credit.
Yes, I'm sure. The other sort of big character you've got in here is, let's just say, the scientist role played by Keeley, which...
Because we don't want to give too much away.
Yes, because we don't want to give too much away. So, Keeley is a phenomenal actress as well.
So lovely.
How was the casting process for bringing her on board?
Yeah, I met with her over Zoom. I had seen a bunch of her work just because I was a fan. And I was she's so smart and thoughtful. And she, I think, responded to the idea and the character. And we had a really nice conversation. And I think part of me really hoped that she wanted to do it. And part of me was like, oh, goodness, she's never going to want to do it. And so I felt very, very lucky that she could join us. And she was such a amazing, talented professional. It was such a joy and a special experience to get to work with her. So I feel still very lucky. I'm actually flying to London tonight. I'm going to go see her in the play that she's doing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Excellent.
She's an amazing performer.
Yeah, she's wonderful. One of those names that when it pops up in a TV show, you think, well, this is going to be good because she's in it. So, she's one of those people.
She's so great.
When it comes to doing something like this, which is a sort of sequel-ish to the original show, are you very conscious of threading that needle between making the show accessible to new viewers who may not have seen the original, while also being able to give something to fans of the original as well? I mean, that's a very difficult line to tread. I think it's really interesting, certainly with the opening 2 episodes. You do get more of it in the second episode, but the first episode has very little direct connection to the first show, which I'm guessing was a conscious decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and we talked a lot about this. It was, an interesting challenge to try and give the, core fan base of the original show the themes and some of the characters and just some of the fun of the original show that they had responded so much to. And this kind of group of women kind of coming together and this idea of family in a sort of unusual sense was something that we really wanted to recapture and hopefully give to the fans. But I also didn't want someone who was coming to the show fresh, who had never seen Orphan Black, or certainly not all 5 seasons, to be like lost in the weeds of the story and not really be able to track what was happening, because there's a lot of story in that original show and it gets quite complicated.
Yes.
So I wanted to give a new audience a kind of clean entry point. So we spent a lot of time trying to balance those things. And I think we got pretty close. I think it's, you're never going to be able to give everybody everything they want. And I also had to kind of find some entry point for myself creatively in terms of shaping the story, in terms of like what I felt like I was bringing to the show. And I think, in the end, we got all of that kind of together. And then John Fawcett, who's one of the co-creators of the original show, was the director of the pilot and the producing director and executive producer. And he and I really worked very well together collaboratively. And he was sort of the keeper of the original show. And so he could help inform decisions and choices based on, like this was such an important thing for the fans, or this character, or like this kind of moment was always so fun. And so we talked a lot about that. I spent a lot of time talking with him, like early on, just about what the original show really held and was successful at doing, and what people really connected with. So I had a lot of support there.
Yeah, I think it does pull it off really well. Certainly the first couple of episodes that I've seen, I tried to place myself in the mindset of, would this make sense if I hadn't seen the original show? And I think it does, because there are characters that show up, but I don't think you necessarily need to know who they are for the story to work as it is. So yes, I think, well done, you pulled that off.
Thank you. Thanks.
For you, this is sort of quite an interesting one, because you've gone from sort of writer to co-producer to producer and you're now sat as the showrunner and everything's your responsibility. Was that kind of daunting coming to that?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a really, really, it's a really challenging job, and I had a wonderful team of people around me to help me. So I had a great writer's room. I had John. I had a lot of really lovely collaborators. And because I have always liked the business because of the collaborative business, that was really, really important and really helpful. So I had a lot of really, which I couldn't have done it without such good support. But yes, it's a very challenging job, but it's also super fun. It's also really exciting to learn how to trust your instincts and realize the vision that you're having and have to kind of shape that and not kind of run it through too many other people. I mean, there's always partners in all of these things, but it was exciting and hard and fun and challenging. And, everybody always talks about it as this impossible job. And it is in fact, like impossible in the ways that I was told it was going to be. But I think because I had also been prepared so well by all of the people I had worked for previously and worked with previously, I was set up well to take it on because I had a lot of experience going into it.
In terms of the rest of the people involved, you mentioned John there, obviously who did the original show. I noticed you brought Trevor Yuli back as well as the composer for it. He was
so lovely. He's so nice.
And you actually kept the original theme for the end theme as well, which I thought was a really nice touch. Yeah. In terms of sort of other people, did you bring other people across as well from the original show, or were those the main sort of two people?
Those were the main two people. We had people on the crew in Toronto who had worked on the original show.
Yes.
That was often really nice. Everyone was not always available, but there were people who had been on the original show on the crew, and that was really, really lovely. And then, we shot in Toronto, which is where they shot the original show. So that was kind of fun. It felt like we were playing in the home field, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the crew in Toronto was excited that we were coming back and doing a show there again. So that was a nice feeling. But some people were not available. We met with some people who had taken other jobs, but it was a nice feeling. And we tried as much as possible if there was somebody who had worked on the original show and wanted to work on the production to embrace that. And that was a nice experience.
Yeah, that's lovely. Just going into the sort of writing side of things, it's obviously set in sort of near future, which I love things that are set in that period. Mm-hmm. How much research did you end up doing into the technology that's used in the show?
Yeah, so it was actually something that the human printing technology was at first pretty theoretical in terms of our conception, just in the original pitch for the idea. But then once we started to get into the writer's room, we were all doing more research about it. And I knew that it's actually funny. I just looked at the New York Times website, and one of the top 3 headlines was that they transplanted a pig kidney into a human today, which is like a landmark thing. So that, it's not exactly a printed organ, but it was a special thing where they've bred these pigs to be able to produce human kidneys, which is incredible.
Wow.
So we did a lot of, reading and research about all of that. And then we actually got to meet with a scientist, with a professor at Wake Forest University, which is on the East Coast of the United States. And he has a huge tissue printing lab. And it took us a while to get him on the phone, but it was such a great conversation, and he was so enthusiastic about the show and about the idea. And he was like, it's really not that far off from what we're actually doing in my lab right now, because they're printing little tiny mini hearts that beat, and they're printing, little tiny brains, and they can print, obviously skin tissue that's grafted for burn victims and things like that. They've been able to print an entire ear to replace somebody's ear. And they're really working hard. It's much easier for them to print softer organs like bladders and kidneys, I think, because they don't need to have so much internal structure. The things they struggle with are sometimes like when an organ really needs to be able to hold its shape very well. So it was an amazing conversation, and he made us feel like pretty good about the direction we had already gone down, because he was like, here's basically how it would work, and here's kind of how the machines work now. And if you were doing a much more advanced version of that machine, here's how it could operate. But it was all sort of in line with what we were thinking, which is basically like a very sophisticated inkjet printer, like laying down these like incredibly specific different types of cells. You have I think it's over 300 different types of cells in your body, and they can each be kind of replicated from stem cells. So if you imagine a printer that has that kind of complexity and can kind of lay down those cells, and you have a very high resolution scan, and as we know, like the digital information in those images is getting only more sophisticated. So he was like, it really doesn't seem that far-fetched to me, and that made us all feel great.
It is incredible where the technology is heading, and it's really quite astonishing. The show's actually been out in some locations, hasn't it? Because it went out on Stan in Australia, I think, and then we've got it coming here, and then and then I think it's June on AMC in the US. So you don't know whether you're doing another season yet or not. Has it got to sort of come out everywhere first?
Yeah, I think once we've launched in the US, we'll have a clearer picture of what season 2, whether or not that's going to be possible. We're all, hoping for that and keeping our fingers crossed. And we're, starting to put some basic pieces in place so that we're prepared if that happens. We'd love to do it again. I'd love to do it again. It's such an exciting world, and there's so many possibilities. And I'm excited for the UK to get to see the whole show now. It's funny because we shot so long ago now that I'm sort of, as I'm doing these interviews, I'm remembering all of the exciting things you have coming to you. And I think I hope that everybody enjoys it. It was really fun. It's been really fun to make. So I'd love to get to do another season. And we certainly positioned ourselves at the end of season 1 to demand a second season. So hopefully we'll be lucky enough to get that. But yes, it's come out in Australia and then certain places in France and Spain and Portugal. And I think the response has been pretty good.
Yeah, from what I've seen, the response has been pretty positive all around from people who were fans of the original show and people that just picked it up. The response seems to have been pretty good, so hopefully it will go down well over here. I know there's a lot of excitement for it and when it gets released in the US as well. Did you say Orphan Black Echo? It's been a while since you shot it. Have you got anything else lined up that you're working on at the moment?
I have, the marketplace is in a sort of state of flux. So I've got lots of different pieces of material around. I have a Ursula K. Le Guin book on my desk. This is a sort of sci-fi world that I've been talking to some people about adapting for TV, which is a different field than Orphan Black, but really interesting. And she's such a great writer. So that's kind of exciting.
Ah, cool. That'll be good. A couple of final questions for you, which are fairly standard for everybody that I do interviews with. So first question will be, what TV shows are you watching at the moment?
Oh, I've been watching One Day on Netflix, which has been just kind of like a sweet, fun romance with an interesting high concept that I'm sort of intrigued to see how. I'm only about halfway through, but I've been enjoying it. So that's been good. That's what I've been watching right this second. Yes.
Cool. And if you had the opportunity to work on any TV show, it can either be something historical from the past, something present day, or some sort of future genre maybe that you haven't worked in before, what would it be?
I'm dying to do like a sort of straight relationship show. I miss the like kind of old days of kind of family dramas and relationship dramas. And I've been wanting to watch that, I think. I've been wanting to watch. Sometimes I think, there's so much big genre and big concept on TV. And I'm such a character person. I care so much about the relationships. And I find that that's what draws me in. So I think the thing I always joke that when we were in production, I would always be like fine to let go of something for a production reason that was like a big explosion or a car crash. And I was like, as long as we get to keep the scene where the two people are just talking about their feelings on the park bench, I'm like, okay. So which everybody used to make fun of me about. But I do miss that on TV sometimes. Just, there was this show in the US called 30 something that was a long time ago. Yeah. I kind of miss that. I would love to see that. I would love to work on something like that.
Excellent answer.